I was in a group message on Facebook chatting with some friends, and I made the mistake of confessing that not only have I not sewn the Peekaboo beauty bag from Moremeknow, that I actually didn't even own the pattern yet. Needless to say, after having that conversation, the peer pressure that ensued, because that's the kind of sewing friends I have, the enablers, I now own the pattern and I'm going to sew it today on camera for the first time. Everyone has told me it's a fun pattern, it's super quick, convenient, and really a great size and shape, and so I'm so excited to try it. After looking at the pattern, one of the first things that stood out to me is that it's clearly marked on the center piece if you want to use a panel where your panel should end. That is something I have so much trouble with. My panels always seem to be a little too low, a little too high. So the pattern gives you the mark as to, hey, don't put your center motif or your panel placement below this mark or you'll lose it in the bottom of the pouch. I love that. So I have everything cut out, and let's go ahead and see what we think about the very popular the Peekaboo beauty bag. To get this pattern started, the first thing we're going to do is pull out this center piece and our two side pieces. This is going to end up being my front, but really the front and the back look the same unless you're using a different print or different pieces. Your two side pieces need to be cut mirrored. The pattern actually has the pieces already mirrored for you, so you'll cut two out of this shape and two out of this shape. You have two separate pattern pieces for that. Very easy to not get confused. What you want to do is kind of go ahead and orientate the way you want everything to look. This is the way my front will look, and so then I just take one of these side pieces and I simply place it right sides together, and then I'm going to sew down this side. I'll make sure I back stitch when I start and stop and sew with the seam allowance given in the pattern. I'm not even going to use a clip on this because it's just a small distance and I can hold it. For the side pieces, I'm using a vinyl from My Little Shindig. For the middle pieces and my lining, I'm using this print from Jane R. Edwards. This is a cotton canvas. I'm not interfacing any pieces right now. However, after I get the front and back constructed, I am going to add a layer of fusible foam. I love pouches with foam in them, so that's going to be my choice to get that structure that I want since I'm using lighter weight materials. If you were using all vinyl and a water resistant canvas on the inside, you definitely wouldn't need any extra stabilizer or things like that. Now that I have this sewn together, the pattern tells us that we are going to leave the seam against the side piece, so we're just pushing the side piece over, and we would top stitch down this side piece to attach the seam to this side piece. However, I love the look of a seam on both sides, so I am going to butterfly my seam open, and then I'm going to top stitch down both sides of this seam. I'm not going to do that yet. I am going to sew all pieces, the front and the back sides, and then I'm going to attach it to the foam, and that's when I'm going to top stitch after it's attached to the foam. I have found that my stitches look better if my material is properly stabilized. So if I sew it right now, yes, it'll look okay, but it'll look like much better stitches if I do it after the foam is attached. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to go off camera and sew all four sides to the front and back main pieces and attach it to my foam, and then I will come back and show you how I top stitch those seams open. I have the sides sewn to the front and the back, and I went ahead and attached it to the foam. My next step will be to top stitch down both sides of the seam. That is optional, and I'm also going to attach a tag. When sewing down these seams, I'm just going to do 1/8 of an inch away on each side of the seam. Now that I have these seams sewn, I'll repeat the same for the other piece, and then I'll add my tag off camera. Now that I have the front and back exteriors completed, I'm going to go ahead and work on my zipper and attaching it to the bag and then finishing everything up. So I want to set my exterior aside just for a minute. My zipper is zipper tape from Moremeknow, and I did use the tab. There's a pattern piece in the pattern to make a zipper tab for one end. But on the other end, I did decide to do a 90-degree angle just because I like the pouch to open wide on one end, but you definitely can finish both sides with a zipper tab, of course. So I pull out one of my lining pieces, and then I just center my zipper tape on top, and I'm just going to base this in place. So just 1/8 of an inch all the way down. Then I will come back in with the exterior, place them right sides together, and sew with the full seam allowance from edge to edge. Now that the zipper is basted on, I'm just going to take, I think I want this to be my back piece, I think. So I'm going to add this first. Since my zipper pull is going this way, if I add the back piece, that will mean the zipper pull will close to the front piece the correct way. So just make note that I always get a little confused, but I think I want the tag on the back of the bag. I'm just going to match this up along this top edge and the sides, of course, and this time I'm going to sew with the full seam allowance all the way across the top edge, back stitching when I start and stop. Now that we have these two pieces sewn together, let's go ahead and flip. Now this pattern tells us that we don't top stitch with the lining, we just top stitch with the exterior. So we would just leave the lining this way to top stitch. But I like to top stitch both of mine, so that's what I want to do. But I'm only going to top stitch along the length of the zipper. I'm not going to go from side to side on my top stitching. So when I'm top stitching, I will put my foot down right where the zipper tab starts. I'm going to make sure I'm pulling that lining so it stays out of the way. And I'll back stitch here, and then just continue to sew just 1/8 of an inch away all across this top edge where the zipper is connected. Once I get to the end of the zipper, I won't go past it. This is how my first side looks. Like I said, this will be the back, so I'm going to go ahead and attach the front the same way to this other side of the zipper, and then we will come back for the next steps. I have everything put together. I have exteriors on the top, the linings underneath, top stitch ready to go. I am not adding any kind of D-ring or anything for like a handle, because this is not really meant for a wristlet or a carrying case. This is more like a beauty bag, so that's what I'll be using it as. I did have a pull that had an opening in it, so just in case I decided to, I could attach a wristlet there, but I feel no need at this point to do it. I opened my zipper halfway, not so much that I need it to be open for the turning, but just because I don't want any like chance of me sewing over that metal zipper pull. So now what you'll do is you'll just put those linings and exteriors together, and we're going to sew these. So we're going to sew the bottom of the exterior and the sides of both. On the lining, we're just going to sew part way and make sure we back stitch so we have the opening to turn. A basic zipper pouch at this point. After we get those parts sewn, then we will come in to box the corners. But first, let's sew down the bottom and the sides, leaving an opening in the lining. As you can see, I haven't clipped anything. I'm just keeping everything in line as I sew. Could it maybe be easier if I clip short, but I just don't waste the time lots of times to do it. When I come up to this seam, I'm going to separate these pieces. I want to have the seams going, the exterior seams going to the exterior, the lining seams going to the lining, and then I'm just going to press it flat so I can sew over it with the least amount of bump there possible. And then I will tell you the trick that the pattern gives us for reducing some of the bulk and just making these side seams look a little bit better. We have everything sewn together, and so now the next step is to box the corners. But before I do that, Lauren gives us a really good tip. She says to help your corners look a little bit better is to just kind of trim this area here, which is genius once I think about it. I just hadn't thought about it. So I'm not cutting into my seams, but I'm going to kind of do a diagonal cut just to reduce some of that bulk right there. And I'm betting this is a technique that I will want to use in other patterns, because that area does get so bulky because there's a lot of layers there, and it's a kind of like a really noticed spot there at the top. So I just took out a little bit, not a lot, and you would think that wouldn't really make much help, but it really will. I think once I think about it, it'll just let that lay a little bit nicer. So I'm going to do that on this other side. And now to box the corners, the way I like to do it is I like to stick my hand in the opening so that I can get things really nice and opened at the bottom. I used to try to just box the corners from the bottom, but then when I would do that, they never would turn out. So if I go from the middle and get it really good and open in there, I can get a better corner in my opinion. So once I have it opened, I'll pull, match up those seams. I'm going to butterfly my seams. You can nest if you want, your preference on that. And then I'm just going to start clipping. I'm going to use my bigger clips here because I do have some foam and thick seams. I am also going to use my finger to kind of push in there to make sure that everything's laying nice and flat and I don't have any kind of puckers or bumps that I'm going to sew over. Now when you sew it, don't try to just sew it like this. You want to really smash this down flat so that you can really see that you're getting a nice, flat, straight edge. So really open everything up. Come across here and look and see if it's looking flat. And if it's not looking flat, like mine's definitely not, so I'm going to just readjust a little. And then even if it's not straight, I'm going to sew it straight. Even if I have to trim off quite a bit, I do not want. And that after I open it up a little bit more, it's much straighter. I'm using my fingers just to make sure those seams stay open. Pressing really nice and making sure I sew straight across. I do not want to shift. I'm watching my seam allowance, not my needle at all. So now what I want to do is I want to look at my seam. I'm just a slight bit, maybe a 1/16 of an inch off. That's not enough to matter to me. I'm also going to look at this edge to make sure everything looks straight. Maybe a little bump there, but all in all, not too bad. So I'm okay with how everything looks. I'm going to complete those steps for the other exterior corner and then the two lining corners. The last step is then will be to turn the pouch or the bag right sides out and close up the lining. I have everything sewn together. Here's the exterior with the box corners. Here's the lining. I'm going to use the opening in the lining to turn this out. I have not closed up the lining yet, so I'll need to do that and get that, and that'll tighten that up just a little bit. But look at how wide this opens. This is a really nice size bag. I did not realize this would be this big. So I really love the size of this. This can store a lot of stuff. I can see what people are saying. The sloped size where it's kind of at an angle really gives you a lot more room to store stuff in instead of just a straight pouch. So you have a lot of room, a lot of width and depth in this bag. Super cute, super easy. I would say sew time's maybe a half an hour, same for cut time. And so for probably 45 minutes to an hour, I'm sure it'll be quicker as you get used to it, you can have a gift ready. Especially good for custom prints, like you can buy the fancy custom fabrics and just offset it with a cheaper print on the side so you save money but still have a really beautiful bag. So this is my version of the Peekaboo Beauty Bag from Moremeknow, my very first one. I definitely think I'll make more. I can already think of so many ways to fancy this up or different things to do with it. So today, I hope you are able in your sewing room to try a new pattern that everybody else loves, and I hope that you also have a great day. Thanks so much for watching.